The Soul Society arc of Bleach has functioned as a race against the clock, as our team of heroes have desperately tried to save Rukia before her impending execution. They fought a gauntlet of enemies, getting closer and closer to their captive friend, but I still never expected the arc to come to such an incredible climax. An explosion of all of the mounting tension, and Ichigo progressing so far, all in order to protect the woman that changed his life. After so many fights and character introductions and so much world building over the span of all of these chapters, we finally reached the day that we have been dreading since the moment Byakuya and Renji arrested Rukia. The day of her execution. The execution itself is presented in a much grander scale than I imagined it would be, with her being levitated up this enormous platform and the weapon transforming into a Phoenix Force Jean Grey looking thing to try to deal the finishing blow. It's a pretty spectacular thing to see and so different than most executions I've ever seen, to say the least. This isn't a simple hanging or stabbing or beheading, or there's not just a guillotine waiting for her, like a full-blown giant flaming bird about to kill her. And it's effective. You can feel how just devastating this weapon is. You can feel it about to snuff Rukia out of existence forever. Until Ichigo finally comes to the rescue. Ichigo's arrival was such an exciting, satisfying moment. He appears out of nowhere and blocks the blow that would have killed Rukia, saving her just in the nick of time. Ichigo has spent this whole arc trying to get to this moment, ready to protect his friend at all costs and growing strong enough to actually be able to do it. We've seen him face anyone that got in his way, no matter how strong, and we've seen him go through whatever he had to get to this point. It was smart to not show the readers the end of his Bankai training because it didn't let us know that he was ready or on the way even. For all we knew, he was still in the midst of it, and instead, now we get to see the results of those days of training. With that cape on even, it really did feel like this big superhero moment for him coming to save the day. It's hard to put into words how satisfying it is to see Ichigo finally rescue Rukia. It's obviously been a moment with a lot of build-up, but it delivered on all of that and more. She was still not really wanting him to risk his life to save her, but you could slowly see that melting away, with every display that Ichigo and even Renji aren't the same that they used to be. They've gotten stronger, all in order to help her, putting their lives on the line for her own, even when she didn't want them to. And from that point, what was supposed to be a simple execution is thrown into chaos, as the simmering tension between the Soul Reapers throughout the arc finally reaches a boiling point. Ukitake and Shunsui spring into action and seal away the weapon, and they succeed, proving that there are some more Soul Reapers that are willing to go against their laws and do the right thing. I had a good feeling about those guys, so I'm glad they're good eggs. But Head Captain Yamamoto doesn't agree with me, and he is very, very not happy with their treason. I really enjoyed the opportunities to see some conflicts between the Soul Reapers as well, giving us some insight into their pasts and more about their relationships with each other. Whether it's the complicated tension between Yoriichi and Soifon, or the face-off between Shunsui, Ukitake, and Head Captain Yamamoto. In both instances, we're learning about the complexity of these relationships and how these people have drifted apart in their ideals and their stances. When it comes to Yamamoto, he's just been a face of authority this whole arc, and now through challenging his proteges, we see that he is head captain for a reason. I never doubted the old man's power for a second, considering that's something of a shonen trope, but I didn't think he would come off nearly as intimidating as he really does. It really does feel like this disappointed, furious father trying to discipline his rebellious children. These encounters didn't take up much time and weren't always focused on, and often weren't resolved, but I really appreciated that they contributed to one of the strongest things about this Soul Society arc as a whole, the exploration of this cast of Soul Reapers. We've had a chance to dive into some of their past, but also learned about all the intricacies in their relations to one another. Kubo's done a wonderful job painting these characters, where even these side conflicts, sometimes with characters we don't even know that well, still offer some good drama and perspective. But we all know what fight we really want to see. The rematch we've been waiting for throughout the whole arc ever since Ichigo was humiliated by just one single blow. Ichigo versus Byakuya. There's a really great dichotomy between these two characters. A friend that will do anything and fight anyone to protect Rukia against a brother that won't lift a finger to save her. I love that you immediately see that this isn't gonna be like their last fight. Ichigo is able to keep up with him, which is a huge difference compared to last time. He even keeps trying to goad Byakuya into using his Bankai, and when he finally does, Ichigo manages to endure it better than Renji did. And then he reveals his own Bankai, finally showing us the results of all of his training. I really wasn't sure what Ichigo's Bankai would look like, but I love the direction that Kubo ended up taking it. So many Bankai that we've seen are very flashy and very visually overwhelming or larger than life, from Mayori's weird big poison baby to Tozen's sensory deprivation chamber, to Renji's segmented snake monster, to Byakuya's blades turning into whips and waves of razor-sharp petals. Up until this point, the Bankai have all been these massive shows of power, but Ichigo's is much more simple and much less showy. Essentially, his giant kitchen knife-looking Zanpakuto shrinks into a smaller, black, more traditional-looking sword for him to wield, and comes with a huge increase in speed and power. It's much more subdued than the other Bankai we've seen, but that's what I love about it. It complements how different Ichigo is from the rest of the Soul Reapers, and come to think of it, his Zanpakuto has always been geniusly distinctive from the other swords wielded in the series, even from the start, with how large his sword was in comparison to Rukia's. The most interesting thing that was brought up was that it shouldn't even be possible for Ichigo to achieve the levels that he has. He shouldn't be able to keep getting stronger and stronger or reach levels that can rival captains. We've been seeing him on a very uphill growth in power throughout the series since the beginning, and now it feels like he's reached the absolute apex of what he can achieve, but it still might not be quite enough to take down Byakuya. The hollow mask that's been randomly appearing to protect him and coming back after it's been disposed of makes its most direct appearance so far right when he was on the verge of losing. Unlike the last times when it just appeared on his person, this time it starts forming on his face, and some other part of Ichigo or part of the mask takes over, completely changing his tactics and style, catching Byakuya seriously off guard. In this moment, Ichigo's a completely different person, like the mask is taking over. It even takes a lot of effort for him to rip it off of his face as he retakes control of his body. I'm just trying to figure out what this really means. Did something happen when he was nearly turned into a hollow? Did some residual hollowness stay behind because of how close of a call it was when he almost completely transformed? Is this wild, violent creature what he would have become if he hadn't managed to become a Soul Reaper instead back then? Is it some situation like what Kain went through where a hollow has bonded and possessed Ichigo's soul and Ichigo's just lucky enough to be able to fight for control? It's hard to say, but it's going to be a problem, I'm sure. For now, though, he's just happy to have that mask off as he and Byakuya finish their duel with some final blows. Byakuya is an interesting character for a number of reasons. He has always been presented as a final obstacle and what Ichigo is going to have to overcome in the end, and that kind of lended to how distant he felt to me as a reader. And I mean that in a good way. He feels so detached and aloof even when he arrives to watch his sister be killed, but you always got a weird feeling that there's something more going on behind all those quiet looks. Throughout their fight, Ichigo tried to understand how Byakuya could just let his sister die and do nothing, and the captain vowed to tell him that, if he can defeat him. And when Ichigo miraculously pulls out the win, Byakuya keeps his word and explains it to all of us as well. It was interesting to finally get to hear his perspective, to learn that he wasn't just some cold, unfeeling monster that didn't care if Rukia died, that he's weighed down by responsibilities that go beyond his personal feeling. Being part of a noble house, he wants to be an example to others, and that's why he clings to the laws so firmly. Byakuya is not some villain. He's bound by his duties and his position, trying to be the best Soul Reaper he possibly can be, to inspire others to follow his example. What I love most, though, is that Ichigo hears all of this and is just blatantly like, nah, you're still wrong, and tries to get him to see that protecting people you love is more important than any laws that are broken in the process. But I do think this fight with Ichigo could humble Byakuya and make him see the error of his narrow ways a little bit. If Renji and Kenpachi are anything to go by, sometimes losing to Ichigo will change you in different ways, and maybe Byakuya will change too. We'll just have to see. We finally have a moment of catharsis as Ichigo finally defeated Byakuya and finally rescued Rukia, achieving what he set out to do when he first came to the Soul Society, fulfilling his promise to protect his friend. But I have to stop there because the things that are happening now that I just read are gonna require their own lengthy conversation. Because guys, what the actual is going on? Thanks so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe because the next video is already shaping up to be a very big one. There's a lot to talk about.